people will start thinking about, oh, I'm not really enjoying this, and actually the money's a bit shit. But the first thought that they'll have is, I'm not really enjoying this. My manager's avoiding me. I'm not getting any one-to-one time with them. I'm not clear on my role. I don't really know, how I could potentially develop. What does the future look like for me in this company? And then that's when they start looking and they start seeing other similar roles that have got a higher salary. That's typically what happens. The first thought isn't, I need more money, usually, right? So I just wanted to kind of dispel that myth. And actually what then happens, because pay is also used as a incentive to get people to stay. So whether it's a counter offer or, oh, let's give them more money, if those issues that cause them to start thinking about going somewhere else aren't fixed, all you're doing is paying them more to basically shut up and tolerate what's upsetting them in the first place. So money is such it's a myth that actually that's the reason why people leave.
Welcome back. This is the final the final solo interview episode of the year. It is Wednesday the 31st. New Year is just around the corner, and I'm sneaking in one final episode before the New Year's special later this afternoon. So this morning, I'm talking to Maritsa Inglessis, the people keeper. Maritsa is a staff retention expert. She has over 20 years experience in HR and working on people culture kind of roles. We'll be talking today about her experiences in the HR field, about what she does today, about what you can, could and should be doing to retain the people in your organization. So we'll be covering concepts like what causes high turnover, what are the symptoms, what are the deeper issues that may be there, how more proactive HR practices can reduce or remove that problem, why founders, leaders, business owners often struggle with these issues. We'll also cover things like difficult conversations, employee satisfaction, valuing your people, the hows, the whys, the wherefores, and much more besides. And of course, leadership is interwoven throughout this question, throughout many of these issues. So we'll be talking about that all the way through as well. It felt like a really great place to end the year on, at least until the New Year special in a few hours, because it's such a relevant issue that so many leaders in all kinds of businesses are struggling with right this very moment, and no doubt will continue to do so in the new year. So yeah, plus it's just a fun conversation. Maritsa's sense of humor really comes through, and we had great fun recording it. So I wanted to have the last solo episode of the year be a fun one that also covered some meaningful topics. And I think we hit that brief, nail on the head, etc. But as always, listener or viewer, you be the judge. You tell me. If you are enjoying this episode or the podcast in general, whether this is the first or the last episode you've listened to, if you're enjoying the show and you want to go deeper, if you want to get more into that real human side of leadership, the messy bits, some of which we talk about today, then do come and hang out with me and other leaders at my Integrity Leaders online leadership community. You'll find more information and the button to sign up at leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. On that website itself, as well as the sign-up page, there's also a load of free resources there. There's my quick start guide to leadership. There's the Heroes quiz. There's all kinds of things. There's articles and more. So have a browse, hit that green button, come and join us at Integrity Leaders. It's a people-first, sci-fi flavored leadership community. It is there for anyone who's looking to lead with more confidence, more clarity, and integrity, even if you don't necessarily refer to yourself as a leader just yet. Do stick around till the end for more information about that, as well as where and how you can learn more about Maritsa. And that's enough from me. Without further ado, here is today's guest after the intro music. So nearly without further ado.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Maritsa, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It's lovely to chat with you again, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, it was good to have you. And over to you to start off with. Push you in at the deep end, as they say.
Nice.
Tell us a bit about yourself, your career so
Yeah.
far, what you do, why you do it, anything else you want to tell us, really.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. So I've been in my career for over 20 years now. It makes me feel very, very old. But yeah, I've always been in the HR people culture space. Started completely by accident in this field. I got thrust into it by a university placement that I'm forever thankful for. I was put in the HR department. I remember reacting, "Ugh, what's that?" And now I actually love it. Well, even at the end of that year, I loved it, and I was like, "That's what I want to do for a job when I grow up." So yeah, I've been in that space for all that time. About 4.5 years ago, I set up my own business. So prior to that, I'd worked in some really large global organizations with thousands of employees. I've also worked in some much smaller organizations as well. And I did a little stint in the public sector that was super interesting. And then, yeah, 4.5 years ago, after my relocation out of the UK, I decided to set up my own business. Initially started as a HR consultancy, doing generalist HR and providing support to a number of different businesses. I did some contracting, but also some sort of more shorter term stints and support with some clients. It was doing that actually that made me realize and reflect on the fact that actually, as an industry, us HR peeps, well, not us people, but the concept of how things work and how things have been working is that very much reacting. So something happens with an employee and, oh my God, we need to fix it. The sky's falling down, and so I can't remember how many times I've had conversations with people who say, oh yeah, we've got a poor performing employee, we need to exit them. Well, okay, what conversations have you had? Oh, none. Okay, so it's not really something that's just happened that's urgent. So, and I think unfortunately some of that is because of the perception of how we as professionals can help, but also I think there's that then there needs to be that shift within the industry itself and being a lot more proactive with how we deal with employees and the way that we work with our business counterparts and being more commercially minded. And so a couple of years ago, I niched into something that's a lot more focused on employee retention. So I now call myself the people keeper. It's all about making sure that, if there are businesses where they have high employee turnover, so that's where the number of people leaving is higher than we'd like, so typically around one a month, I go in and I help them to fix it, to set themselves up for growth, because you can't grow your business if you've constantly got people leaving, and then really to equip them with everything that they need, the tools, the knowledge, the skills, to then make sure that actually it never becomes a problem again. So that's kind of my journey. And it's really interesting. I've been reflecting, certainly since I've done my rebrand, which was quite recently, around, the thing that where I started my career was in a HR role. And I then went on and did my dissertation back at university on employee engagement and motivation. And I feel like I've kind of come around full circle. So yeah, there you go.
It's funny how that happens sometimes, isn't it? It also made me chuckle as well. You've got into HR by accident. I'm trying to think. I think I've only ever met one person who works or has worked in HR and did it intentionally, like did their degree in HR and all sorts of things. It seems to be one of those things that people kind of end up in.
Fall into. Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm not sure
and
what
now
the lesson
I'm
is
so
there.
Grateful, but... Sorry, what was that?
I said, I'm not sure what the lesson is there about HR as a role and the way it's perceived.
Really interesting. And I'd be really interested to understand sort of what what demographic that population is that you're referring to as well, because I wonder whether it's changed over time. I know from my experience, it's gone. I was in HR back in the days when it was personnel to HR to people and culture. You know, there's been a lot of rebranding, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to someone about this not so long ago. Just the phrase "human resources" just in itself feels a little bit distasteful, doesn't it? And I much prefer
Totally.
people and culture. That's a way better way of talking about it. But the emphasis
definitely.
as well, and I think a lot of people, particularly employees, can be quite naive about what they're actually there to do. And there's this whole thing, isn't there, you see on social media about who HR actually works for. Are they looking out for the employees, or are they looking out for the business? Quite often it's probably a bit of both, isn't it? But at the end of the day, who's signing the paychecks is the question.
Yeah, true. And there is always that thought, and there's always that balance of power. And I've seen it play out so many times, and it's why I am very, very particular in the sense that yes, I'm trying to think of the words now, but it's that there is actual, tangible and well researched value in looking after your employees. And when organizations prioritize that, they see some fantastic results like decreased absence rates, improved profitability, productivity, all of that kind of stuff. And where they've got high employee turnover, for instance, there is an obvious reduction in that. So, you know, from a commercial perspective in the business, yes, it might feel or it might sound like, oh, it's just the pink and fluffy stuff. And we've got a business to run. Well, actually, who helps you run your business? Because it's certainly not just the business owner or the founder or the CEO. It's everyone within that. And the more aligned, the more behaving like a true team that looks out for each other, that has their own accountability, that has a certain level of autonomy, but also works for a common goal, surely the better. You know, it shouldn't rest on just one person's or a small collective group of people's shoulders. And the best way to do that is actually, ironically, who would have thought, but by looking after the people that are in that business in the first place. So it's not just something to do because it's the right thing to do. And I strongly believe that we spend so much time at work as individuals, that there's like bottom line value that can be realized by doing things in the right way, as well as saving stress, hassle, mental space, you know, mental load. When, you know, I've spoken to so many people and helped so many people managers through really challenging and complex people scenarios. And I know what they would rather be doing is to not be doing that, and actually to have had really, you know, useful conversations right at the start, where everyone's expected to behave like adults, and this is what we expect, so that actually you avoid all that stuff in the long run.
Absolutely. No, I'm completely with you. Like, in an ideal world, HR wouldn't need to exist, would it? But sadly,
exactly. Yeah.
Sadly it does.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. There's so many of those things. Well, I mean, there's studies around like happiness at work and things like that, and how that creates more productivity, and it's a great one for staff retention, obviously, because if you're happy, you're going to stay longer, presumably. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an assumption. But, you know, you can tie all of these things back to the bottom line. And ironically, the people who are saying, you know, it's not my job to keep people happy, you know, that's not what management's about, that's not what the business is for. They are saying that because they probably believe I should be chasing the profit and this is a distraction. And again, it's one of these massive ironies of leadership, and I guess what you do as well, is that by taking that action, chasing the pound signs or the dollar signs, ironically, they're actually making that outcome less than it could be by ignoring the people who are actually going to do it and deliver it, as you say.
Yeah. It's that really basic concept of actually, in a sales team, let's say, what is more powerful? Is it just one person doing all of that and sort of chasing the money, or is it actually having 5 or 10 people who are really, committed, and they believe and trust in the product, whatever that might look like, that they are trying to sell because it is helpful. They see the value of it to their customers. That's going to work far better than just one person trying to scrimp and save on the money and try and get some deals and close deals just on their own, or take the credit for deals that others have closed in their team, which happens all the time. It's that having that level of maturity, and I find the people who think in the way that you described, typically the ones that bury their heads in the sand and just think that, oh, just because we've always done it this way, it's fine. And it's not the case.
Yeah, I think there's a certain percentage of people as well. It's about like avoiding those difficult conversations, the uncomfortable moments. And I don't know. I mean, I've got no evidence for this, but I feel like a lot of people, when they bring on their first HR manager, the reason they're doing it as leaders is because they don't want to get involved in that uncomfortable stuff. They just want to like palm it off on someone else.
Yeah, I've seen that happen as well. To the point where actually, I've worked with businesses where they were actively avoiding it, and that they thought that was the role that the HR person had, is that they would have the difficult conversations, or I would be having those difficult conversations for them. So there's a lot of re-education, and I do a lot of that with the clients who I work with, not because of their misunderstanding, but it's just that thing of oftentimes that because I work with founders and business owners, so between 10 and 50 employees, they're still in that role of, actually, I've built this, I still need to be involved. And they're so here with it that they can't see that actually, if they were to step back a little bit and continue doing that whilst building the capability of the rest of the team, that actually it means that their shoulders can drop a little bit, and it actually becomes much easier and actually a bit more enjoyable for them and for their people.
Yeah. Again, it's another one of these paradoxes, I guess, isn't it? Because I don't believe many business owners, at least ones who are not solopreneurs, like people who are in growing teams, and that's what they want to do. I don't believe they really started their business so that they could then spend the rest of their life or career doing the thing that the business does themselves and being hands-on all the time. They tend to have that vision because that's why you bring people on, isn't it? So you don't have to do all the things yourself, surely.
Yeah.
And yet they get very quickly into that fear of letting go, and like, well, if I'm not doing it, then who am I? And what does that mean for me? And I've seen people wrestle with that, and I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah. There's a whole thing. It's founder syndrome, and it's that fear of letting go. It's their baby, understandably, right? You've built it from scratch. I've worked with people who have built their businesses in their living room and then moved to the garage and then moved on to a premises. I get it. But it's linking back to that. Well, what was the reason for it? And it's never, so I can carry on working in here. It's typically the goals that they have and the aspirations that they have for them individually and for their business is that they want to maybe be involved slightly. They want to be able to take a step back, have more time and headspace, so that they can actually do the stuff where they are adding value rather than where they're just having to do a bit of everything and probably not doing it very well either. Because with all the will in the world, how can you possibly do a little bit of everything really, really well? And it's often a difficult realization for those owners and founders to have. But once, they kind of realize, okay, well, actually, this is what I need to do. And typically, actually, they'll come to me saying, I really want to be able to take a step back. I'm too involved. I'm too stuck in the weeds. And so it's like, well, okay, if that's what you want to achieve, then this is what you need to do. And I help them work through that. Not just by saying, I'll go and do this, go and do that. Here's a template. I'll coach them through it as well. So it can be really, really powerful once they've come to that realization and that self-reflection that actually, something needs to change.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is to do with why you're in it as well. Like you see it quite a lot in sort of the tech industry and the sort of the startup culture, and a lot of these sort of owner founder types are also the subject matter expert, and it was their idea, the product or the technology. They came up with it. They're the inventor as well. And I can see that getting really quite difficult in the way we've talked about it, but also because those sort of people actually do want to keep doing the thing themselves, because that's what they've always done. That's what they love to do. That's why they started the business. And again, like there's an issue there that they'll face, because you want to keep doing it, but in order to do that, you need to make money from it. But in order to do that, you need to stop doing it. And it becomes this cyclical, and you can see why they get so het up about it.
Definitely. And I think one of the things that it's endemic in let's call it the corporate world, so not in the sort of smaller businesses, it happens everywhere in those larger businesses, that people get promoted on that technical skill, so they become that subject matter, they are that subject matter expert, whether it's because they've been there for a long time, they're really technically competent, and they're then promoted based on that skill. But then what you find, and what I've certainly found in the 20 years plus that I've been doing this kind of thing, is that they're not then supported to succeed as a manager or as a leader. So they're expected to lead a team, oftentimes being promoted from never having managed a team to managing a team of 10. It comes with so many complexities, and yet it's kind of never addressed. I've worked maybe 2 or 3 places in all that time where they had something really comprehensive to train their newly promoted and newly hired people managers. So it doesn't matter whether they've managed people elsewhere before. Everyone was brought in and taught the same thing so that everyone was on the same page. But it doesn't happen that often. And I think it's one of those things where it's often felt, like it's, that will be us becoming too corporate, or actually it's too much of an investment to go and get some people manager training or something like that. When actually it's that short-sighted vision, which again, sometimes founders and owners fall into, of like, oh no, I can't possibly invest that because we don't have the cash right now. But actually it would just save so much time and money in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the mentality. I mean, obviously, doing what I do, and I do get quite frustrated. And this is why I tend not to work with big corporates. It's that kind of mentality of, well, nobody gave me this training and I figured it out, so why can't you? And
that's
again,
really
like, it's so understandable. I mean, I've thought that earlier in my career. I was that person, and I certainly worked for one. And you can understand it, at a sort of superficial level. Yeah, okay. I mean, you're right. That is kind of a true statement, but also it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it means is that you just get this perpetual cycle of bad managers. I mean, that's why they keep coming up, is because they've worked for a bad manager. They've not been trained how to do it right. So they've only got that one example. So they follow that example. And most of them don't realize they're bad managers either.
No, absolutely not. No. I've had people say to me, I can't figure out what we're doing so wrong that's making us lose our people. And you then politely have to say, well, actually, let's have a look at how you do this and what you're doing. But yeah, it's really interesting, because it's like, that's not the best reason to use as to why you shouldn't then invest for your people, because it's a little bit of, well, that's how we've always done it, or, and actually, if you had invested in that, you wouldn't be in the shit that you're in right now, and we wouldn't be talking. Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. So bringing it back then to that staff retention piece and some of the difficult conversations that we covered earlier. So one example that always sticks in my mind, and like a practical sort of day-to-day example, I guess, and I've told this story before, but it's the conversation around pay rises, right? This is, I think, where certainly I've seen leaders go really off the rails. And there's one particular example in my career where it just took it to the absolute extreme. So it's an uncomfortable conversation, especially if the business isn't in the position to offer the pay rise that the person wants. That's a really challenging one. That's probably HR will get that conversation, weren't they? 9 times out of 10, you're going to deal with it. The extreme example I had was he knew I wanted to talk about it, so he didn't come to the office for 3 weeks.
Whoa. That's insane.
And when he finally did, he obviously hoped I'd forgotten, but I hadn't. What had happened was in those 3 weeks, I'd realised I was being avoided, wasn't responding to emails or messages about the subject, so I got increasingly angry.
Yeah, too right. I don't blame you.
I mean, it's an extreme example, but the point I think is if you avoid that difficult conversation, whether it's about pay or something else, it may feel like in the short term, great, don't have to deal with it, I can wash my hands of it. But all you're really doing is not just putting off the problem, you're making it worse. Because all that time people have to stew on it where you haven't dealt with it. And I think this is one of the big causes of poor staff retention. I mean, yeah, that's a sweeping statement. But I mean, the cost there, of course, is that person's probably going to leave. In the meantime, the period between when they want to have the conversation and when you finally do or when they leave, they're not going to be working as hard because they're annoyed. So they're not going to be doing their best work. They won't be in the right mindset to give you the results you want. And that's certainly not going to be the first thing on their mind. And then when they do leave, you've lost access to all of their knowledge. So, I mean, when we talk about poor staff retention, there's a few things that I've already answered for you there. Sorry. But what is like the real cost of this? I mean, it's more than just kind of knowledge and culture and kind of ill feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I just want to come back to the topic of pay rises and the assumption that pay is a key reason why people leave. It's not.
No,
it
that's
might feel
fair.
that way. Yeah, because what happens is that typically people will start thinking about, oh, I'm not really enjoying this, and actually the money's a bit shit. But the first thought that they'll have is, I'm not really enjoying this. My manager's avoiding me. I'm not getting any one-to-one time with them. I'm not clear on my role. I don't really know, how I could potentially develop. What does the future look like for me in this company? And then that's when they start looking and they start seeing other similar roles that have got a higher salary. That's typically what happens. The first thought isn't, I need more money, usually, right? So I just wanted to kind of dispel that myth. And actually what then happens, because pay is also used as a incentive to get people to stay. So whether it's a counter offer or, oh, let's give them more money, if those issues that cause them to start thinking about going somewhere else aren't fixed, all you're doing is paying them more to basically shut up and tolerate what's upsetting them in the first place. So money is such it's a myth that actually that's the reason why people leave. I hear it a lot, and it's why I want to, and I posted about it actually this week on LinkedIn, that it's not what everyone thinks it is.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. I may have been a bit confusing there. I was using it as an example of a difficult conversation, but you're completely right.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah. And I would imagine that had you had the opportunity to have a discussion with your manager and have them say, look, actually, we're going through a really tough time at the moment in the business and we can't afford a pay rise. We can only afford X amount, or actually we can't afford anything at all. But, we've thought of something else that we can do, or, what have you. I would imagine, whilst it wouldn't have been the answer that you would have wanted to hear, you would have appreciated the honesty, I guess, right?
Yeah, probably. So funnily enough, the bit of it that I've talked about
is avoidance.
This was like at least 10 years ago now. So my memory's starting to fail me a little bit that far back. But interestingly, the bit I talked about earlier is pretty much the only part of that situation that I remember. Like, I don't remember whether I eventually got the pay rise. I certainly don't remember the conversation, if it ever happened.
Yeah. But isn't that interesting though?
Yeah.
See, I find that fascinating, that how that was the thing that stuck in your mind. And I think this is one of the things, going on to cost, it's one of the things that employers don't ever think about. There is a word on the street, right? And if you were ever to, I know that people when they're going and applying for jobs and getting interviews with certain managers or what have you, they will go on LinkedIn and find the people who worked for that person and actually do a bit of their own referencing. And I think we don't, I don't think people think in that way or think that it happens, and it does. And actually all it takes is for you to go, actually, no, he avoided a conversation with me about my pay. Yes, it was 10 years ago, and yes, people might have changed. But if that's the sole thing in all of that time that's stuck in your mind, that reputation is following that person around. And the same thing happens with a business in general, but also those business leaders. It's not one of the biggest costs of high staff turnover, but it certainly is a cost. Things like Glassdoor exist. People will talk, and you can't necessarily put a price on that, but it's that reputational value and the sort of the NPS score of your employees and your previous employees as well, and whether they would recommend you. But yeah, sorry, I appreciate I've kind of jumped around a little bit.
No, it's an interesting point. And yeah, I mean, that reputational piece as a business as well, not just as like the individual manager. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like to think of myself as someone who doesn't hold a grudge very long, but there are definite exceptions. And that particular manager is on that very short list.
Yeah. But also, again, it's that thing of if it happened that somebody did come and approach you, and that would have been, say, 2 or 3 years ago, it'd have been even more recent. And you would have probably been quite honest with your feedback. You may have, I don't know how open and honest you would have felt like being, but the likelihood is that people will be, especially when it's like a more like a not a public channel, like, for example, a reference request or something like that, a formal one, where somebody's just connecting with you and asking for your honest opinion. You're probably going to be a bit more honest, so yeah.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't recommend working there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've sort of been dancing around the question for the next
Yeah.
topic, really. Like, why do you think this is such a common challenge? I mean, there's obviously enough businesses suffering with this to keep you in work. So, why?
Yeah.
Why? What's the root cause, do you think?
Yeah. So, the root cause is I think, like, I know, sort of operationally what the root causes are, but where it stems from is, I think, that piece that we talked about earlier of people go through their working life as an employee, seeing that actually, I get promoted based on technical skill. I may not have that management sort of knowledge or that training, and you kind of fumble your way through it and you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great because I'm then getting promoted again. And then they go and build their own business. They'll do it typically they're building a business based on a product that they have the technical knowledge to then build. Do you see what I mean? So they're building that minimum viable product. It goes well. And then they think, oh shit, okay, I need to start doing stuff. And they don't then have that knowledge of, okay, well, what do I need? How do I then articulate that? How do I then find the right person? How do I assess that they're the right person? How do I bring them into my business? All of those steps that it takes, between that founder or business owner realizing that they need more people to then actually having them in the business and operating in a way that is supporting that founder and business owner. There are so many steps in there that are missed. And that's where I see the sort of key problems. So typically it's down to the reasons why people leave are down to the work and the environment, the direct environment and stuff related to the job that they're doing. So it could be that actually they don't have the right tools, they don't have the right knowledge, anything like that. It's also down to things like the leadership and the culture in that business. Again, that comes from the top. If that business owner or founder either doesn't recognize it or hasn't had the time to sort of think about it and think, oh, actually, this is happening. This is this is happening as we're growing and I haven't had time to influence it because I've been so in the weeds. It's kind of happening whether you like it or not, and then you don't have any control over it, and that's when, you know, things start to get a little bit, I don't want to go as far as saying toxic, but they can get unhelpful. The leadership, you know, also those skills, the management skills, either there are none or they're very quick and dirty. And while some people can cope really well with ambiguity, there is a certain level of ambiguity and a certain level of stuff that they won't cope with. And so they think, oh yeah, I'll put up with it for a little bit. And then they're like, actually, this isn't getting any better. So that, and then the final thing is a little bit about what I alluded to when I said, you know, about articulating what I need, the gap between articulating what I need as a business owner, what person I need, and then them actually being in the business and operating at 100%, you know, the best ever, great, is all around the offer and the opportunity and how you position it or don't to people who you're trying to attract to work in your business, but then also how you continue to do that. Because every day when somebody comes into work, it's an exchange of their time, their energy, their effort for something, money, benefits, you know, their colleagues, what they're learning, how they're developing. And if those things are just okay, or if they're non-existent, again, people will probably go along with it for a short time, but after a while it starts getting quite tiring. And if all of the other stuff is broken as well, they're then in a position where actually it's not very enjoyable, and they're literally just there to get paid. And when you start to have that kind of relationship with your employees where they're literally just, you know, collecting money, they're not doing their best work. They don't feel great either. So that the experience that your then customers are having is probably not going to be great. And it all just starts to unravel. So yeah, those are the sort of key things I would say is why people do end up leaving.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just because people can put up with things doesn't mean they should as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So the last sort of 5-10 years, I think we've seen some pretty interesting changes in the workplace generally. And without wanting to sound too like Karl Marx about it, you go back like 100 years, the reason why employers could set the terms and behave pretty much how they wanted is because they controlled the means of production, right? You couldn't do a factory job without the factory. So you couldn't take your labor elsewhere as easily. And that's just not true anymore. And it hasn't been for quite a long time in the majority of industries. I mean, even factories themselves, most of it's done by robots now, isn't it? So like, the software programmer for the robot doesn't have to be on the factory floor, I suspect.
No.
Maybe they do. I don't know enough about it. And then with things like the COVID years and the Great Resignation and then quiet quitting, and there's another one I heard recently that I'm not 100% sure what it means, but bare minimum Mondays. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah.
And I think these are kind of, to me anyway, I think these are signs that the workplace, the workforce, the way it works, the way work works, too many W's in there, is shifting. And I think one really interesting thing at the moment, and for the last year or two, has been this sort of the return to office movement. Let's call it a movement. And that feels like either like the pendulum swinging back the other way again and the employers are going to gain all the power back, or it's like the last gasp before they give up. I don't know. What do you think?
I have quite strong opinions about it, actually, to be honest, but because I've supported senior leaders remotely since 2008. So before COVID, before all of that stuff, we weren't doing it on video. We were doing it on Skype through like Skype calls, and it can work, you know. And I strongly believe, and it's why I feel so passionate about doing things in the right way, not only for the commercial aspect of it and the business running efficiently, but also for the individual, that there is more to life than work. At the worst, I commuted 3 hours a day to my job, and that I absolutely hated. I never, ever want to do that again. And so I personally strongly believe that if a job can be done remotely, then why the hell not? what needs to adapt. So the technology, our ability, to like the connectivity, internet, all of that stuff is there, and it has been there for a while. What hasn't shifted is leadership thinking, business CEO, that level of thinking. And it's a little bit of back in my day that there's undertones of that come out of, oh, well, people aren't productive when they're at home. Well, when people say that to me, my first question is, do they know what productive looks like? And usually it's a no. It's because working in an office, it's always about, who looks like they're working, what time are they arriving, what time are they leaving. That's the presenteeism thing.
Yeah.
It's never been around the actual value that person's delivering. And so that to me is just laziness of like the leadership capability and understanding hasn't shifted to accept and adapt to actually something that would make more sense from an employee perspective. It's just a bit of like burying a head in the sand, and coupled with and I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen with a business with office space in Canary Wharf. They signed a lease, when was it, 2018, for 10 years, and now the office is sat empty. And it's like there's this thing of not being able to let go of the fact that, oh, we've got this really expensive office space that's laying empty. Let's get everyone back in so that we're not wasting that money, when actually you'd have paid the money anyway. And actually, if you've got people who are more engaged in the work that they're doing, because, by the way, over 80% of employees globally are disengaged. So a very simple way of making people happier and more engaged in the work they're doing is to A, tell them what great looks like in their job so that they know they're doing a good job, and B, letting them do it from wherever they can in their home, so there's all of that. Yeah, so you can see I feel quite strongly about it.
And I think rightly so. I'm saying that because I agree with you and I'm biased, but I agree with you. Like the leaders who say, it's about productivity, I think what they're really saying though, it's almost Freudian. Like they're telling you more about themselves than they are about the people who work for them. Because what I hear when they say that to me is, if I'm at home, I don't do any work. That's what they're really telling me.
Yeah, is that as well.
And so they think, because that's true for me, it's true for everyone else, which it absolutely isn't. I mean, COVID proved that, didn't it? I mean, all these businesses that stayed in business, it was because people worked really hard at home. They kept the doors open for you when a lot of companies collapsed. Companies that were face-to-face and maybe didn't get as much government support, perhaps. It is a funny one. And I think it is a failure of leadership. I think those people those leaders who are insisting on back to the office, and they talk about, the other one I hear quite a lot is, it's the culture. It's just not the same when we're remote. Again, I mean, two things. One, force people back to a place they don't want to be. What impact is that going to have on your culture?
That's going to really help your culture. Yeah.
And two, if culture is really important to you, make it so great that people want to come to the office. And then your problem's solved anyway, isn't it? But they don't think that way.
Yeah, but also there's nothing to say that you can't still have that great culture because you're not all in the same room together. Like 100%. You just need to adapt how you build that, and what values and what behaviors you are modeling as a leader in your business. That means that actually, I love how they do their work. And it's that adaptation piece that I think there's a bit of laziness and a bit of, like I said, back in my day, we're going to do the same thing that we've always done. And I rely on, standing up and seeing at the desk opposite me who's there, just that needs to change, because actually, and it's a very similar argument that I get with that I get really het up about, is about the whole, Gen Z don't want to work. And it's like, okay, well, that may be true, but actually, is it that you need to adapt, that this is the new generation that's coming into the workforce, and whether you like it or not, just saying that they don't like to work isn't going to help you or them. So which is it? If more people want to work from home, if more people want, not necessarily work from home, flexibility, because actually some people still enjoy going back to the office and they don't have to commute 3 hours, or if they're doing it once a week, it's not as bad. It's not saying, I'm not by any means saying working from home or working remotely is the only way to go. The important thing is to know what works best for your people and to be able to accommodate that, not only from a logistics perspective, but also from a management and leadership perspective. That's going to give you the best outcome. But simply saying, "Oh, people don't work from home, and we need to have them back in the office," that's not listening to what actually would work better for them. And of course, people is going to get their backs up.
Yeah, 100%. The Gen Z thing annoys me as well. As a millennial who got tarred with that brush not that long ago myself,
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's lazy thinking. And those same people, like if I turn around to them and say, well, you boomers, you don't understand technology, what do you know? They get really upset and offended by that, rightfully so. So, it goes both ways. Whether it's a generational thing, whether it's a remote versus hybrid versus in office, or, any other like demographics you could define, I always try to resist putting people in groups or assigning motives or behavior to them based on what group they're in, because it's lazy thinking and it's not really leadership. And I think what it really comes down to here is it's the kind of the difference between control versus actually leadership, because control isn't leading. It's, you're using your position of power over the purse strings and people's paychecks to impose your will on them. That's not leadership. And I think people get very confused. I'd argue also it's not really very good management either. But yeah, I think that one is more of an argument, isn't it, rather than just a black and white yes no.
I think talking to your what you were saying about the balance of power, I think what has been forgotten and what I don't see happening as often, or perhaps just paying lip service to, is what I mentioned. It's that thing of like, your people will tell you what they want and what they need. And your role as a leader or a business owner isn't to say, yes, jump, how high, or yes, I want a 20 grand pay rise. Sure, let's do that. It's not about that. It's about listening to understand, rather than just giving that person a space to talk into the void. But also, like, where is that coming from? Like, what's happening? Why is it that, you want to work from home? Why is it that you want to work in the office? What would work better for you? I see so often, it's a smaller business thing, but even with larger businesses, it's that thing of one size is going to fit all. Now there's the danger of obviously trying to appeal to everyone, and that can become very, very expensive, and that's not what I'm suggesting at all. But a simple thing, one of the things that I see is that a business owner will try and put in things like private medical insurance as a way of preventing people from leaving, because it's like, oh, maybe this will stop it. It won't, by the way. But they do it without even thinking or understanding whether it's something that's needed, that whether it will be used, and whether it's actually going to be beneficial for people. But it's their perception of what they think is going to work, or they think their people want. And that's where, because you're making assumptions, aren't you, based on either a whole generation of people, or because of a demographic or what have you. But actually just stripping it all back and just very simply speaking to people, understanding what's frustrating them, what's working well, what would they need more of, what would make their job fantastic. You probably won't be able to accommodate everyone's needs, but the fact that you've listened and letting them know, actually, here are the common themes, these are the top 3 most common things, and actually this is the stuff that we'd like to address, that would be so much more powerful than here's private medical insurance for you.
Yeah. I think the other
Yeah.
one that we probably all fall into really easily as well is it's that kind of self-bias, isn't it? Like, if it were me, this is what I would want, therefore that's what I'll do for everyone.
Yeah.
And there was I can't remember, it was one of the big tech firms, it might have been Apple or somebody like that, but in the kind of the period where COVID was coming to the end and lockdowns were going away, they actually got in a bit of trouble with their employees for the opposite reason. Rather than insisting everyone back to the office, they tried to impose hybrid working, but they didn't consult. And so everyone was like, well, hang on, no, 3 days or 4 days doesn't work for me. I'd like this many in the office. And so they faced pushback, even though they probably thought we're doing the right thing by people. This is what everyone wants. But they maybe hadn't actually asked that question. So it's not just the return to office. Like, we shouldn't be too hard on those guys alone.
No,
like it's
no, true. Okay. But it is like that. I think the basic thing that we're both trying to say is that, like, making those assumptions and just thinking that you're doing the right thing may not always be the right thing. Yeah. And oftentimes the best thing to do is just to have open and honest discussions about it. Again, it comes back to those different conversations, because sometimes from honest and open discussions, you get feedback that you may not be ready to hear, or may not be expecting.
Yeah.
So there's that level of maturity from the person who's doing that as well. But
absolutely, yeah. No, you've got to know your people if you're going to be effective as a leader. If you're going to make the decisions that result in the outcomes you want, and you're not going to know people if you don't ask them questions and talk to them occasionally.
No, exactly. And so you can see why the whole argument around technical skill, and that being promoted on technical skill is yes, okay, that's great, because people will ask you questions about something quite complex that they need some support or some advice or some guidance on, fine. But actually the majority, when you move into a manager role, the majority of your work then becomes about that management rather than the doing, like you said. And so it's just such an important part of management and leadership, and it's just sorely like lacking, training and sort of education around it.
Yeah, although I have to say, I find it quite funny, because when we're talking about this, that's sort of the accidental manager phenomenon, they're promoted for technical skill, that sort of thing. The example I hear most frequently is salespeople. They're promoted to sales manager, they're not trained how to manage or lead salespeople. But you're right, it's all about the people. And the reason I find this funny is the great salespeople, isn't their job just talking to people and understanding their needs? Like, how is that different? So why is that the classic example?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I realised you had asked me a question about the cost, and it's something that I think that I didn't really answer, because I just talked about the reputational cost.
We talked about the soft costs, I guess, didn't we?
Yeah. Like, I wanted to revisit that, if that's okay, just because it's something that often when I'm working with my clients, it shocks them, because it doesn't appear on a profit and loss sheet or a profit and loss account or a balance sheet or anywhere financially, and it's actually quite difficult to calculate because it's dependent on so many different things. It's the amount of time that you and your team spend interviewing, per interview, per per hour, hourly rate, all of those things. It's the recruiter cost if you go and work with the recruiters. There's so many different things and so many different variables that make it quite hard to put an exact figure on it. But what the general consensus is on cost when you're losing somebody to high employee turnover, i.e. when it's a preventable loss, it can cost anything between 3 months salary to 24 months, so 2 years of that person's salary. And that's not just about the replacement, that's about everything. So it also covers things like, it can take between 6 months to a year for somebody to become fully productive in their role when they first join. So it accounts for that as well. And you might think 2 years is ridiculous, but when you've got somebody who's quite senior, who's perhaps joining as a CTO or, a sort of quite technically complex and quite senior role, you can understand why actually it can cost up to 2 years of their salary to that's what that cost is. I typically say it's around 6 months if you are basing it at the average UK salary of about 35k. Because of that level role, it's typically going to be sort of not that senior. But yeah, if you're losing one person a month and it's costing 6 months at 35k, that's 17 and a half, I think, roughly per loss. So you're looking well into the 6 figures, per year, that it's costing you. I'll never forget, I worked with a client. They were very small. They're only 4 people, but they had lost 4 people, not the same roles, in the preceding year. When I explained that was about 75k based on the average salaries, and they nearly fell off their chair. And because for a business that's small, they weren't turning over as much. That's a significant chunk of money. Yeah. So, it's scary when you start to add it up. But yeah, it's like I say, it's scary because it's so unknown. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the productivity one you feel like might be relatively easy to calculate, but the rest of it maybe not. I don't know. I guess it depends on the business and what it does and how easily you can attribute time and productivity to money.
Yeah.
But there's the knock-on effects as well. Like, it's not just that one person, is it? It's all the people they worked with. They either maybe it could be a net.
Extra work?
Like if they weren't well liked, maybe it's a gain. I don't know. But
yeah, it might be a gain on the personal side, but that person's work isn't being done while that position's vacant.
True.
And who's doing it?
Yeah.
And do you pay? People are having to pick up that slack. Do they get paid overtime? Do they get paid time in lieu, or what's the trade-off? Because giving them an extra 25% worth of another role's work is probably not going to land very well. So that there's a cost there as well, because it's not only the financial cost, that other person's going to be quite pissed off that it keeps on happening as well, because that's the thing. It's that sort of it's the problem vacancies, isn't it? That mean that actually that the department, the business, the team, whatever level it's happening at, can't get stable, and so there's constant flux. And it's like ripples. It starts affecting others. So one of the reasons that people will leave is because they see that lack of stability.
Well, yeah. Or they're 2 or 3 people down the chain and they've got 4 people's worth of work now. And
yeah.
It's the
customers see it as well.
Oh yeah. 100%.
I was speaking to Ellen last month. Who are you? And then the month before that it was George or whatever. That they want that continuity, and if people are constantly leaving, they're not getting it.
Yeah. No, it's the snowball turning into an avalanche, isn't it? So if there was one thing that you could change about the way that companies hire and onboard their people, because it feels like that's sort of the start of the journey, isn't it? What would that one thing be?
Oh, one thing is really difficult because...
You can have 3 if you like.
It's so multifaceted. I'll go for one. And I would say you might think, oh God, that's so obvious, but it's communication. Because it's communicating and articulating what it is that, when they're hiring, what is it that I need? And it's not just a shopping list of what that person does. It's like, okay, well, why is that important? Why should that person come? Why should I leave my current job and come and work for you, Joe Vlogs? And what does great look like? All of those things. So being, and this is where a lot of business owners fall down, is that they don't do that. They'll just, I've seen it happen. They'll put a job description from ChatGPT, and which is really generic and created in a vacuum, and then they wonder why 3 months down the line their new sales account exec isn't working out. But communication, literally from the minute that you articulate what you need in your own head, but then also what you communicate externally that you need, because articulating what you need as the job description, the advert is something different because the advert is what you're using to attract. You've then got the whole interview process, communicating with them, with applicants and candidates what to expect, whether they've not been successful. So many people don't get that rejection email. And, whilst you might not be able to give tons and tons of feedback, just knowing actually I've not been successful is just a really simple thing that can mean a lot to people. And then with the interview process, telling people, okay, we're going to go through 3-4 stages. This is who you're going to meet. This is what we expect. We'll communicate with you. We'll book in this time, just thinking about and anticipating questions and then communicating based on those questions that people might have. And again, once they've been successful, they've been offered the job, explaining what does that look like, their contract, when you want them to start, where you want them to start. The worst thing is like remote first businesses. You don't have an office to go to. You can't sit somebody with reception and give them a coffee for half an hour because you're late. You've got to be there. They need to know where that there is. And again, setting the expectations, communicating what does great look like in your role? How do you know you're doing a good job? How do we work here if we're remote first? How do we communicate? All of those things. I think, communication, that's the one thing. And it's not, we're communicating now, right? And I'm sure some business owners and founders and leaders are probably saying, well, I can communicate fine. You might think so, but actually you're not communicating for you. You're communicating for someone else to understand. And so that flip of what questions might they have? What concerns might they have? What do they need to know? How do I explain that to them? What methods do we, all of that stuff around communication is there's often so many gaps around it. And that's where you get misunderstandings, you get people doubling up. So two people doing part of the same job and not knowing, and then you're basically losing productivity there, or things falling through the gaps, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds obvious, but you're right. I mean, it's so important, and it's important for leadership as well. I know a reframe around communication that I've heard recently from a previous guest. He's got a whole chapter in his book about it. But it's about who's responsible in communication for the understanding. And I think so many of us, just generally in life, but particularly in leadership, we assume I communicated clearly, therefore if the message wasn't received, that's not my fault. But actually the responsibility for understanding is on the person communicating outward, not the recipient. So as you say, you've got to understand what method even of communication works best for the person you're trying to say whatever it is to, or message or email or whatever. What do they need to hear?
Adapt depending,
absolutely. And it will change for individuals, each different person that you're communicating with, and that I mean, that takes a bit of time. You're not going to get it on day one with a new hire, for example, but you at least ask the question, how do you best receive information? Would you like a phone call? Would you like an email? WhatsApp, carrier pigeon, within reason, what's going to work best for you, and then you kind of evolve it as you go. But so many leaders just I've written a 30-page
email
standard operating procedure or whatever it might be. My job is done. If you can't understand it, that's your problem, and we'll be in performance management before you know it.
Absolutely. One other thing that I'd love to add on that is that we've been talking a lot about what needs to change from a leadership and a management perspective and that side of things. The other side, it's around sort of communicating too, but the other thing that I believe needs to change and we need to get better at is that communication is always two-way. But actually what tends to get forgotten is that encouraging people and making it safe and accepted for them to then be able to give feedback, to communicate backwards, to ask questions, making that the norm, that requires some decent communication as well. So yeah, it's not just about what you communicate to others, it's making it literally like communication everywhere within the correct channels and the correct ways and all of those things, but that people, even that your sort of entry level role feels as comfortable as the CEO in speaking up about things that they're seeing and suggestions and better ways of doing things and improvements, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that psychological safety is really important. I think something else though that we also don't talk about, like feeling safe and able to say it is one thing, but I think we also need to go a step beyond that, and make it like feeling like it's worth your time to bother saying a thing. Like knowing that you can is not the same as knowing that you'll be heard and that something might actually be done about what you say.
Yeah, it's still that communication thing, isn't it? It's like it's that listening to understand and then reflecting back. And if it's feedback, for instance, it's that, okay, we've spoken to 50 people. These are the top 3 things. This is it's that getting the feedback, actually digesting it, and then explaining back and communicating back what you're going to do with it, because there's nothing worse, like you say, of like, is it worth my time? Well, probably not, because I'm just shouting into the void. I've said this stuff so many times before.
Yeah, I mean, psychological safety is really important. Don't get me wrong, but it's also for me, it's like the minimum baseline thing. It's not enough by itself. You've got to have that follow up, the follow through, the like show people if they raise a concern, you're actually going to do something about it. You're not just going to say, thanks for telling me, pat them on the back and never talk about it again. Like, that's not helpful either.
No.
If you could start your career or business over again, what would you do differently?
Ooh. That's a really interesting question. I think one of the things is like, and I'd say this with the knowledge of hindsight and what I know now. What I know now is obviously what I didn't know 10, 12, 15 years ago, but it's that thing of slowing down a little bit and not exactly what I'm kind of helping my clients do is not being here with all of the stuff that I've got to do, but and that is a very real reality of getting, and I would imagine everyone experiences this, you're getting stuck in the day to day and the stuff that you need to do, and you need to get off your plate really quickly because other people are waiting for you, versus that stuff that not necessarily that you've got tasks that are more bigger picture, but it's that, where does this fit in? And just reminding and checking back, where does this fit in and how is this done? That kind of thing is what I'd probably do a little bit differently.
A great lesson for either like people who are actually working jobs and employed and solopreneurs and business owners. It's like a universal lesson, isn't it? Because solopreneurs are so bad for it. Like, I'm really bad at it.
Oh, yeah.
Not even every week, every day, every hour, probably I'll be doing something because I know it needs to be done soonish, but it's in front of me, so I'm going to do it. And it stops me from thinking about the more difficult thing of like the next 6 month strategy or whatever. But that's more difficult for me. So I'm going to focus on this podcast episode instead. We'll do this. Good. I can do that. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, it's that thing of your to-do list will never end. So it's like, it's just thinking of, okay, yes, this needs to be done, but actually, does it all need to be done now? That's the other thing, because I think we can all get under pressure with to-do lists or just knowing that we've got tasks to complete. But actually, really, if I don't get this done today and I do it tomorrow or maybe even on Monday, will it be all right? in the grand, as long as, I've communicated, if there's somebody waiting on it, can I just communicate and say, look, I need a bit more time?
Yeah, to-do lists are dangerous. They're
They
addictive,
are.
aren't they? Like that little endorphin bump when you tick something off.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I don't have a
I'm
problem.
trying really hard to be really realistic with the time, the deadline that I give myself, actually, as well.
Yeah. I have to say, actually, I'm a lot better with that than I used to be. I think working by myself and for
Same.
myself has made me a lot, I don't know about you, but it's made me a lot better, a lot more relaxed about things and more able to say,
Yeah.
okay, the house isn't going to fall down if I don't do that today. It can wait till next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what
Agree.
that says about me,
Yeah.
that when I was employed, I was way more like, what's the word? Anal about that sort of stuff, I suppose.
I don't think it's that you're anal. I think I would say it links back to that pressure that every employee feels of around like performance and things like that, and a little bit around maybe the environment that we worked in, of that, you know, one of my managers, who I still speak to now, she's lovely. She suggested to me that, you know, I've got these, you know, I've got these 3 tasks. They're all a priority. I can only work on one of them realistically, and probably only finish the other one by the end of the week or whatever it is. Which one do you want me to drop? Which, you know, it's that thing of being okay. And again, it goes back to the communication piece, right? Which bit do you want me to focus on? Which is the most important? Because I can't do all of them. And making that okay. You know, I think, thinking back in my career, I probably didn't feel confident enough to say that, because the environment's that corporate, you know, or a larger business, or even a smaller business, you just don't feel that, you know, you've got that, I guess, agency to be able to then say that.
Yeah. No, the autonomy,
which is
as well,
why things need to change, because then you get things like stress, you know, and anxiety and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a fundamental thing, isn't it? About if you're leading people, if you're managing people, do you actually care about them as people? Because when taking the opposite side of that scenario you've just described, like that, and I'm not going to put blame on anyone's specific doorstep, but I can see a scenario where the manager's response to that will be, well, you just have to work extra hours until it's done. No, I'm not going to pay you anymore. And that happens in a lot of workplaces, I'm sure, whether it's implied or not.
Does.
So if you care about your people and their well-being, even if you don't care about them as people, if you care about like the longevity of their employment, of your team, of your company, you have to see that's not good. Because in the short term, those 3 tasks will probably get done. But you can only do that so many times before, like you say, the stress, the burnout, or actually they're going to go and find another job with a manager who isn't going to treat them that way.
Yeah, and especially it's that context as well, you know, if that person is always, and again, I'm not talking about clock watching here, because that doesn't necessarily mean, like, it doesn't equal productivity.
Agreed.
But if you know that person is flat out, if they are coming in early, leaving a bit later, working through their lunch, then saying, well, I don't care that it needs to be done anyway, when they're already doing extra, that's really tone deaf. So it's that, it goes back to that care that you were saying of, you know, I don't know, I couldn't live with myself now.
No.
Something like that.
I like to think I never did that as a manager. I don't think I did.
Yeah, same.
Maybe by example, I might have done indirectly, but it's, it is a tough one though. It is a tough one. And it depends on, I guess, the context is king, isn't it, as always, or queen.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that thing of like being really clear of, you know, what is the output, what is the productivity, you know, is it completing these tasks, is it, you know, and being clear on what's really needed, you know, because we might have a deadline of X, but actually, is that realistic, firstly? But secondly, is it really needed? Is the sky going to fall down, like you say? Like, you know, if it's not there.
Yeah, I think, we get to wind up in these like presenteeism, like clock watching, specific times of the day that we all have to work, all of that can all go out the window. And for me, frankly, like so can productivity. I don't think that's a relevant thing for a leader or manager to be worrying about. I think you've only really got two things when it comes to this sort of context. It's your people and the output. And then that interaction, that conversation really should be about, like the traditional is, you need money from me, therefore I need you to do this number of tasks for these amount of hours. What it should be is, here's what the business or the team needs to achieve. These are the outputs we have to hit. What do you need in order to achieve those? And then I, as the leader, will do my best to provide that, whatever it is, that environment.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people think about it in those terms. And then that's where it gets, you've seen it more than I have, I'm sure. That's where it gets into these confrontational, difficult conversations, and there's mismatches and stress and burnout and disengaged people and leaving people and all these other problems. And it's just that basic, it's back to communication again, isn't it? That basic conversation around expectations and what we're each getting out of this and what we each need from each other.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, talking about the business objectives, goals, vision. I think, and I've seen it so often that I talked about job descriptions, but it's always the generic stuff of like, oh, this is what, in my world, this is what a HR manager does, or this is what a HR administrator does, or this is what this role does, or whatever. And it's that not necessarily a shopping list, but you can bet that there'll be similar things on there, which fine. Yes, of course, that's kind of how the world works and how business works. But actually, if you are able to add more stuff in there around, okay, well, how does that then help the business reach its goals? Or what responsibility will I have? And how will I contribute to that? And it's that context. It's not just about doing you need to do this every day. It's this is what we want to achieve. And this is why we need someone with X, Y, Z skills who can do all of this other stuff, because we know what marketing is, or we know what sales is, or like finance, or whatever it is. But actually we want to be known for X, Y, Z, and we need people who can then work on that's it's far more engaging for someone to see and go, oh yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think I'd fit. And B, it's a lot more, you've got that context and you know that actually this is the difference that I'm making, and it's not just going to be about process, payroll, chase debtors, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's not just going to be about that.
I don't want to say I have a problem with, but I'm not a fan of job descriptions generally. Like, the few times I've been involved in like writing them and the hiring processes, what happened was 10 years ago, somebody wrote the first one. They didn't really know what they were doing. They did the best job they could with what they had. And then for the next 10 years, every time there was an opening, we took that one, changed the template like 2 or 3 words, if that, maybe the job title, and just put it out again. And there was never that thought process of, okay, but what does the person actually need to do? Why should they care about this job? Why should they want to work for our company? And all that sort of stuff. Not until like the very end of my career did that stuff even appear on the radar, let alone actually get into a job description.
I hear what you're saying and I totally get it, and I agree with you. There is huge value in having something written down as a starting point, because again, it helps that communication piece. And if you are treating it as I've articulated what we need as a business, and this is why we need it, and this is what the person's going to contribute, and all of that stuff, it's really, really valuable for you as the hiring manager or the leader or whoever to be able to put that on paper, so to speak. Where I hate them at the same time is when they're done once and then put in the drawer and forgotten about, and then they're carted out in things like performance appraisals, when actually the job that the person was hired to do versus the job that they're doing a year later is probably quite different, and that document hasn't been updated. Because it doesn't matter that you've hired someone in that job. The job probably changes as that business grows, especially when you've got a high growth business. It becomes entirely different. Yet actually they typically stay the same. So that's not helpful. And I think the other thing with those as well is where they are a shopping list. They're written by ChatGPT. They're used as an advert. It's not the same thing. Like a job description and an advert for like a vacancy is a completely different thing. I think they're right to get the hate, but I think when they're used properly, i.e. they're regularly updated, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the manager who updates it. The person doing the job is the best person to write it or to update it and tweak it with a sense check from that person's manager. So that they're not saying
it should be a bit of a back and forth, I think, definitely.
So when they're used well, they can be incredibly helpful, because it's another form of communication about expectations, what great looks like, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, ChatGPT is only going to make this worse, though, isn't it? Because the more bad ones that go into it, the more bad ones will come out.
And I've seen some really, really bad ones, but anyway. And then there's the question of, well, why can we not find the right candidates? Well, if that's your starting point, why are you surprised?
Because they're reading that and running a mile. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad I don't have to read them anymore, to be honest. Like, I'm not sad about that.
The other thing, sorry, that I didn't mention as well, that like super pisses me off about job descriptions, or that in general, that communication about what that role is when, and it's happened to me, not me personally, but I've seen hiring managers do it because they're so desperate to get a bum on a seat, is that they'll big up the job and they'll sell a dream. And then as soon as somebody gets in, within about a month, 2 months, they're like, hang on a minute. This is not what I was expecting.
Where's my weekly holidays and my trip to the Bahamas that I was promised? And
or where's my level of autonomy when actually I'm being micromanaged by someone, or whatever, Not that you're going to say that you're going to be micromanaged in a job description, but there's ways of wording
there's
that
usually
actually
hints.
there's a level of checking or something.
There's definitely hints.
The signs were there.
100%. Cool. Okay, last question.
Cool, yes. Sorry, I waffle.
That's all right. No, it's good conversation. So this one is Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it could be literally anyone you could think of, so they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, but someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership, who would that be and why?
Oh my goodness. This is a really tough question. I'm going to struggle with this one. I have one. So I will choose a Greek lady to respect my heritage. Her name was Bouboulina Laskarina, and she was the first Greek lady to achieve the rank of admiral in the Navy. She was a naval commander, and she played a massive part in the Greek War of Independence back in 1821. And I think she would have taken no shit. And just basically to be able to achieve that rank in a country that I still see is so patriarchal. She would have had to fight through a lot, literally in the war anyway, but also just all of that other stuff that comes with it. And she was incredibly successful. She's we learn about her at school here in Greece, and so she's the person who I would say is an inspirational leader.
Nice. Well, fair to say no one's chosen her before as well, so bonus points.
Happy to be the first. Yeah.
No, it's nice to have that sort of the historical and cultural connection as well. So yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Good
Cool.
pick.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, Maritsa, we're more than out of time, really. We've overrun, which is
Yeah, we've
always a
talked
good
for
sign,
ages.
I
It's
think.
good.
Yeah. So thank you again so much for being with us. And
Thank you for
last thing
having
I'll
me.
ask you, if anyone needs help keeping their people, where can they go to learn
Yes.
more about you?
Yeah, go to my website, thepeoplekeeper.com, keeping it simple. You can get in contact with me there. But also, if you're just looking for some hints and tips that are actionable that you can go away and do straight away, I've got some templates and things up there as well. Take a look. There's a resources and learning section. So, yeah, lots of stuff on there.
Very cool. And I'll pop that link in the show notes so everyone finds it easily.
Perfect.
Lovely. Well, that's more than we've got time for. Thank you again so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Maritsa, thank you again so much for your time today. I really enjoyed recording that. I think we had a great time. I hope Maritsa did as well. Listener, viewer, I hope you did also. Hope if you are in that leadership position, if you are struggling with things like staff retention or how to hire and keep those best people in your organization, in your team, or in your business, then I hope you found that useful. If you did, do drop us a review and let me know, or a star rating, whatever it is on whichever platform it is that you're listening. Take that option if you enjoyed it. Let us know. If you want to learn more about Maritsa, do visit her website. That link is down there in the show notes. Click on it, go to the website, learn all the things, and also admire her excellent new branding that she did last year, The People Keeper. You've got to love it. And if you're listening today because leadership is a bit more challenging than you expected it to be, perhaps you are that first-time manager or first-time business owner, and you're finding leadership more of a struggle, heavier than you expected, more challenging, more difficult conversations than you thought you'd have to have when you went into it. Or perhaps you're just suddenly responsible for people and you didn't necessarily plan that or expect it to happen. Then you are exactly the kind of person that Integrity Leaders is built for. It is a community for new, first-time and struggling leaders. Inside, you will find support, training, resources, other leaders that you can relate to who are in similar positions in their careers, and a community spirit, a place where you don't have to pretend that you're the leader who's got it all figured out and you're keeping up with the leader Joneses. Straining that reference, I know. Anyway, so whether you're feeling imposter syndrome, imposter feelings, whether you're burnt out, whether you're just trying to lead your team without turning into a corporate evil overlord, or you just don't know where to start, come and join us because you don't have to do it alone. Click the link, it's in the show notes, it's on the screen. Head to leadingwithintegrity.co.uk and join up today. Hit that big green button on the homepage. Or if you would like to talk it through first, entirely reasonable thing to do, message me on LinkedIn because genuinely I would love to hear the challenges you're navigating, your experiences of leadership so far, and just talk about leadership really. Whether or not you then ultimately decide to join, doesn't matter. I'm happy to have that conversation either way. I'm eager, in fact. So whatever stage of your leadership voyage you are currently at, there is a seat for you at the Integrity Leaders table aboard the Starship Integrity in that briefing room. And I hope to see you there very soon. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Do keep your eye out for the last episode of Leading with Integrity for 2025, the New Year's special coming later this afternoon. We'll be revisiting trends and lessons from the last year with a collection of guests, and then also projecting forward. What are the key lessons to take forward? How will they change their leadership and their behaviours in 2026? And I think there's plenty of interesting conversations and learning that you can glean from listening to that longer episode. And then next week, normal service resumes. I'll be joined by my next guest, Tanya Kobzar. We'll be talking about her experiences as a technology leader, her career journey from developer right the way through to entrepreneur and business owner today, and what she's learned about leadership along the way. So I hope you'll be back with us, usual time, 08:30 UK next week. And until then, I hope you have a very happy New Year's Eve, whatever you do to celebrate. I'll be back in a few hours. And as always, remember, be a leader, not a boss.